Hi guys, it's Mandy from Mandyleeplays, and in this video I'm going to share with you some JRPG remakes that are actually better than the original. I know, surprising is it not? While it is true that some games were good in the original versions, the same can be said for their remake counterparts, whether it's an improvement to the story, gameplay, or even graphics. To me, remakes are good if they're done correctly. Now, unfortunately, some remakes are done quite dirty, but in this video I'm going to show you the remakes that were given the good treatment. The first one is Nier Replicant. Now technically it's called Nier Replicant, a bunch of numbers, but I'm not going to repeat that. So for this video's sake, we're just going to call it Nier Replicant. Now a little history, if you guys don't know, Nier was originally released in Japan and in America, but in the Japan version you play as Brother Nier to Yona, whereas in the West you play as Father Nier to Yona. While the father and daughter dynamic was pretty fresh at the time and a lot of people liked it, it was very questionable at best in some moments. And you could clearly tell that the game was made for a younger person to be there, not an older one. Now, I'm not sure why they went with this kind of method for development. That seems really chaotic, especially from a story perspective. And another tidbit to note that baffles me is that Nier was originally developed exclusively for the Xbox. The almighty Xbox where every good JRPG is. Said nobody. To this day, I'm just baffled at the decisions they made with this game, but lucky enough, they fixed all the quirks and repackaged it for a new audience. And the remake is really good. And now in the new remake edition, everybody plays as Brother Nier instead of Father Nier. They also enhanced the graphics and the gameplay is more smoother. And not only did this remake enhance a lot of the gameplay and visuals, it did also add new things. A good example of this is the side story of The Little Mermaid. Previously, that was only available in the Nier Grimoire Japanese only book, but in the remake they added a new section with new characters for that story, and it was a very good addition, and I loved it. Because I do love when a remake adds some new stuff that wasn't in the original, because if you're gonna remake a game, might as well add things that you couldn't have in the original, that stays faithful to the original concept, plus adding new things that even older fans might not even know. But this makes me appreciate the remake of Nier so much better because they didn't just leave it at that. They added a ton of new things, not just the side story either. There's a whole new ending as well. So the remake for Nier is just perfect in a lot of ways. It improves on the gameplay, improves on the graphics, adds new things, and stays faithful to the original concept. And by far, it's the best way to experience Nier Replicant. Alright, the next one is a bit contentious in the community, and that is for Persona 3 Reloaded. Now, there has been a lot of people coming out of the woodwork saying how Reload is the worst way to experience Persona 3. Alright, so a little backstory. I played Persona 3 Portable for the first time when it came out. For me personally, I feel like Persona 3 Reload is the best way to experience Persona 3. I've never played the original, so I can't really talk on that department. Now, y'all may be wondering, but what about the portable version? No, the portable version sucks. Now, this is the only game on this list that has a remake with a bunch of other ports of the same game out there. There's the original Persona 3, Persona 3 Fez Edition, Persona 3 Portable, and now Persona 3 Reload. So we have 4 different versions of the same game. Anyways, but rest assured, the devs say that this is the final version of Persona 3, so that's good to hear. Now, my main complaints about the Portable Edition was that the game was made in the likes of a visual novel, which is not bad. I love visual novels, but Persona 3 itself is not a visual novel. So all the action scenes and cutscenes are just like literally cut out, or you're just staring at a JPEG while you hear all the noise in the background. It wasn't the best way to experience the game. So the Portable Edition was good for what it was trying to go for, but as a first experience into Persona 3, it was very lackluster to say the least for me. Now, in my opinion, Persona 3 Reload added a lot to the game that I didn't get to experience, like cutscenes, cleaner UIs, the music is remixed. It has it all in my opinion. Now again, some people think that the Reload version is lackluster, but for me, It was a breath of fresh air. It feels like I'm playing a different game. The biggest feature that I loved was the animated cutscene. Gives the high stress, impactful moments more impact. But that's not all, because there's many improvements like the streamlined combat, which is more akin to Persona 5's combat, and plus the added shift mechanic. Now the shift mechanic is kind of like passing the baton, which you could use an exploit by downing an enemy with this elemental weakness. And of course there are some improvements to Tartarus. They made it a more enjoyable experience. Now I know I never played the original, so I can't really compare the two, but I can compare the portable to the reload, and for me, reload is the best way to experience Persona 3. Now the next game on the list is Pokemon Heart Gold or Soul Silver. Yes, a Pokemon game, and in my opinion, the best Pokemon game. My second favorite is Pokemon White and Black. Now I do want to address that I am very harsh when it comes to Pokemon. It's night and day how the games used to be and the games that we get now. A lot of people are like, they're for kids, you grew out of it. I'm like, no, there is some factual things about Pokemon that they stopped doing that were amazing to the series back in the day, and Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver is a classic example of that. Anyways, Heart Gold and Soul Silver is a remake of the original Gold and Silver games released for the Game Boy Color. The remakes are essentially the same world, plot, and more, but retold in a more modern setting. Now, it was a remake made for the DS, which is not really modern in this standard. Now, for me, the thing that really stands out is not only did they have the original concepts from Silver and Gold, they added more. There's a trend in these videos that if you add more stuff, I'm way more likely to like your remake. Now, I'm not gonna go too in depth on how they changed the Pokemon battles, because honestly, I'm not the best when it comes to battling Pokemon. So it was a treat for people who like Gen 2 and Gen 1, and plus that's a lot of content for one game, something that we will never see again from a Pokemon game. I don't know, Game Freak of the past and Game Freak of the now are like two different companies. I was there when the games were good, and I am here when the games are bad, and there's a difference that's night and day. Anyways, I'm not here to harp about Game Freak and Pokemon. I just want to say that Heart Gold and Soul Silver was an amazing remake that added to an already amazing game, and call me a boomer, I don't freaking care. They need to have that same energy for their most recent games. Now, I do know that this is a DS game and the DS and 3DS are currently dead, but if you have a copy or happen to find a copy, I highly recommend you pick up the game. It is very, very good, and it gives you a taste on how Game Freak was like when they actually cared. Alrighty, now on to the next one, Live a Live. So Live a Live was kind of like the progenitor of Octopath Traveler, but with different characters and stories. The original SNES never made it stateside, so this is one step not only to show the game to a new audience, but also to preserve a game that could be lost over time. Luckily, Team Asado decided to remake the game in the style of Octopath Traveler, something we all know and love, and I personally love. And of course, a good remake always has quality of life improvements. So in the remake of Live a Live, they did add an objective marker, which helps a lot. I know a lot of people are like, ugh, we don't need objective markers or things like that, but let me tell you, there's nothing worse than getting lost and not knowing where to go. Because honestly, I do enjoy and love the games of the 90s, I just don't like the jank that comes with it. So quality of life improvements are always a surefire way to get me to love your remake. Now, Live a Live is a good example on a remake that improves on the original format and adds more things to make it more enjoyable. Now, to be frank, I never finished Live a Live yet. I know it's short and I should finish it up, but I do want to add it on this list mainly because it was a remake that was made for newer audiences and for us stateside. There's a lot of games that we don't know anything about because it's only localized in Japan, and as someone who loves JRPGs, I want to normalize more localizations when it comes to games being localized stateside. Now, I'm not going to get into the debate on how good a localization should be or yada yada yada. Localization is such a big topic that I'll probably save for another video, but needless to say, I do love remakes that localize the game to a wider audience. Alrighty, next one on the list is Star Ocean: The Second Story R. Now this one is a lot like Live a Live. While the game does retain a lot of its original sprites and story from the PlayStation 1, they added a lot of dynamic lighting, which looks very, very nice. Also, each of the towns have been redone in favor of being completely remade 3D instead of using the pre-rendered backgrounds, which the PS1 version did. One good thing about this game that I love is that they did did away with the random encounters, and you can actually see the enemies in the overworld. This allows you to do a sneaky back attack or just try to avoid them if you're not in the mood for battling. Now, the biggest improvement in my opinion has to be fast traveling. And some people really don't like fast travel, to be exact, which I can't even comprehend that. But they also changed a lot about the battling mechanic. They added a new mechanic called the break mechanic, where if you deplete an enemy's shield gauge, they are stunned and won't be able to move, so you could go in with a powerful attack. Now, I never played the original game, but from all the improvements that they did with Second Story R, I could really appreciate how they wanted to make this game true to the original source and palatable for more modern audiences. Because let's be honest, a lot of the games that were in the 90s are completely different to how games are made now. That improving games that we loved in the past is really crucial to preserving that game. And I know that the video game industry goes really fast, especially compared to books or movies. So updating the games that we loved and knew in the past is really crucial in my opinion. Next game on this list is Atelier Marie. Yes, I did manage to squeeze an Atelier game in here, but I didn't just put this game on because it's an Atelier game. It's a good example of a remake that's really good. Now, if you guys don't know, Atelier Marie is the first Atelier game in the timeline. So before we had Sophie or Ryza or people like that, we had Atelier Marie. This game was originally released for the PlayStation 1. And a cool side note, if you bought the game digitally, you get access to the original Atelier Marie 1. So you could actually play the original game right then and there and then play the remake, which is truly wild. But I will say the Atelier Marie remake is far more better than the original. Now, I did do a worth the buy if you want to watch it for Atelier Marie, which I will also leave in the description down below along with the other links. So for this part, I'm gonna keep it relatively short. Atelier Marie is a remake of the original Atelier Marie, Alchemist of Salzburg. While the game is smaller in scope, they did a lot of major updates. One major update is doing away with the time mechanic, which can be stressful to some newcomers of the game. Now, personally, I've played the one without the time mechanic and the one with the time mechanic, and I will say confidently that the time mechanic one gives you more than enough time to do what you have to do, but I do love how there is options. Though be warned, if you go for the no time mechanic, it will lock you out of many endings. Speaking of which, this game has a ton of replay value because it is really short. I have never beaten an RPG in one day, but with Atelier Marie being so short, you could literally do just that, especially if you know what you're doing. Now, I know that a lot of people didn't like the chibi art style, but honestly, I loved it. But there are portions where the game does have a full portrait of the characters, but honestly, I love the chibi art style. It didn't really take away from the experience, and I feel like Koei Tecmo wanted this game to be more of an anniversary style title where you get to experience the original in a whole new light. They didn't want to make it its own thing exactly, and they did a fantastic job portraying the first Atelier game for more newer audiences. Next on the list is Fire Emblem Echoes, Shadows of Valencia. Funny enough, I was gonna go to this college called Valencia. I know, that was random. Anyways, Fire Emblem Echoes, Shadows of Valencia is a remake of Fire Emblem Gaiden. They just named it differently, but it is a remake of Fire Emblem Gaiden, which blew my mind at the time. Not surprising though, because Gaiden was only released to Japan, so a lot of people in the West didn't really know that fact. So even though I haven't played Gaiden, I could confidently say Echo Shadows of Valencia is way better than Gaiden. And even fans of Fire Emblem consider Fire Emblem Gaiden the worst Fire Emblem game in the series. Intelligent Systems did the impossible and took what made Fire Emblem Awakening great and used it to base the remake of the game. This game came out for the 3DS right after Fire Emblem Awakening and Fire Emblem Fates. So they had a lot to think of when it came to doing Echoes. But the one thing that they did not bring to Echoes was the romancing, which, not gonna lie, is a bummer. Gameplay wise, the original game is very true to its core mechanics, and this being a modern Fire Emblem game, it does add the casual difficulty and the classic difficulty, which basically the classic is if your unit dies, they retreat, whereas in classic mode, they die. And of course, there's a graphic overhaul, all dressed up in this amazing presentation for the 3DS. I really loved Shadows of Valencia. It's a really good story. Intelligent Subject System did a fantastic job selling us this game that was actually a remake of a non-popular game, changed the title, splashed in some new stuff, and boom, now everybody loves it, like seriously. And there's a big lesson to be learned about how Echoes took a game that nobody wanted into something that everybody loved. Now I'm gonna patiently wait for Genealogy of the Holy War because man, I want a remake of that game so bad. So that is it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed, then please hit that like button. If you have any games that you would love to be remade or games that are already remade that you absolutely love, tell me in the comments down below. I would love to hear it. Please hit that subscribe button. I do a lot of RPG content, lists, and things of that nature, so if you're interested, then please subscribe. I hope you guys have a very fantastic day, and as always, play a good game. Peace.